Welcome back to my channel. We are about to dive into episode 5 of The Wheel of Time season 1. So this is of course a rewatch. I've mentioned it previously, but I'm rewatching to refresh my memory just before the second season drops this weekend. Now we are about to jump into episode 5. I believe it was called Blood Calls Blood, if I remember correctly. It's been a while since, like I said, it's been a while since I watched these episodes. I've mentioned before that the episode run from 4, 5, and 6 are my favorite episodes of season 1. So we're right in the thick of it now. So let's go ahead and jump in. We won't waste any time. All right, let's go. Oh, Alanna. It's always bothered me, the arm, very clearly like a model arm, just bent the wrong way. But let's talk about the scene. I really love that this episode starts with a funeral and ends with a funeral. Like, the cyclical nature of that is really nice, especially for a show that's big on circles, big on wheels. And of course, they're having a battlefield kind of funeral for her. Presumably, I love her fingerless gloves too. Anyway, presumably with rituals that are important to her people, or to her, or to Aes Sedai in some way. I'm very, very excited for season 2, y'all. I haven't been watching any of the sneak peeks or anything other than the main trailer. That's it.
Is she ready for what's waiting in the White City?
You think she talks to me?
She eats every night at the Warder's fire.
She's worried about
Steppin'. Step in.
Warders are not supposed to outlive their Aes Sedai.
It's tough.
Steppin's a strong man. He'll deliver her ring to the tower.
I don't know why it's so easy for me to remember Karene, but not Steppin'. Not like the characters, but the name.
The other 4 are already
But
there.
I'm generally bad with names, so. And we all know how Robert Jordan is with names. My God, my God.
We'll find
I don't know. I think I've seen it before.
Dragon Mount. I love how Tar-Valon looks, especially from this shot. Like, really great effects work, team. Looks great with the dragon mount behind it.
Tar-Valon.
And they repurposed the Shada Lagoth set for Tar-Valon. But I mean, it makes sense though, because both cities were created using Ogier architectures and builders. So it makes sense that they would have similarities in look and feel. So I think it's a good repurposing of the set that is supported in the story. We got the Blood and Ashes drop, the first one of the series. It's a really tough curse or whatever, expletive, if you want to say. It's not, it doesn't roll off the tongue easily, I'm sorry. So, just hard to put in naturally to dialogue. It didn't really, I mean, I'm going to say this right now. It didn't really work in written form either. It's just awkward. It's a bit awkward. I really love fantasy cities. And I love stories that are set in fantasy cities like this. Like, we get a lot of like farmland and traveling and stuff like that in so many fantasy stories, and I just personally really like the ones that are like set in the like underbelly of a city, or you know, on the streets, or that deal with the divide between the nobility and the lower class, that kind of stuff.
It wasn't you, man.
About the Yamelin seat or your tower politics. I told you, I care about my people. Maybe it's you, Aes Sedai, who shouldn't underestimate me.
I mean, she's 100% right. They absolutely are underestimating her and her willpower, her stubbornness. And once she gets a little learning on how to use her power,
It's all right to be afraid.
you know? But she's also being very clearly afraid and
You saw how small
lashing
you are
out
in
because of it.
comparison to it. And how weak you are in comparison to those you've always loved. And now you're wondering, how do you fit into the world? Can you ever go back to being who you were?
You can't.
I know, because I felt it too the first time.
The scene is so good between them. I really, really do
The
love
answer is no.
their relationship
You'll never be
and
the same.
how electric their
But
scenes
it's
are.
time
They
that you
just
saw that for the gift
are
it is.
great. Great across from each other. I
No.
love it.
Stay here. Do not speak to anyone. And I will try and protect you as best I can.
And I really like that Moiraine responded. Like, she recognizes why
And
Nynaeve
when
is
I find your
doing
friends,
what she's doing.
I will bring you to them.
Yeah, and she, even though Nynaeve is being so stubborn and difficult, like, I love that Moiraine acted with compassion and with not just understanding, but empathy, because she knows what it feels like to be in Nynaeve's position. And because of that, she understands exactly what to say, you know? And her instinct is to react with kindness towards her. Like, obviously Moiraine can be cold and aloof and harsh, but
Preaching non-violence.
not all the
Not letting
time.
your pet slaughter anything you come across.
What are you two talking about?
You, obviously. Only good things.
Did you say
Listen, the urge I had
The
to
white
even
collar.
up this man's dreads, like, bro.
you made it?
Maybe bastards, but they won't kill Tuatha. Come on, hurry.
I love that the sculpture. I actually don't think that's a prop. I think they just found that location wherever they're filming, but it looks super dope. And it makes you feel like this area is like really old, like it's remnants from the old world. It's a great find. The Cariathan cycle. Loyal! Loyal is actually one of my favorite characters from the books.
Are very excitable.
Rand? And Nathal?
I've read much of your people.
I'm not an Ioman.
Really? Red hair is one of the few physical traits that can help you work out where a human is from.
I'm from the Two Rivers.
An Ioman from the Two Rivers. An Ioman from the Two Rivers who insists 7 years
Little
old
does he know,
human.
he's actually
That is
correct.
very odd.
I mean, I guess he's half Ioman.
You know this book?
He's mixed.
Yes.
Gonna start calling him our mixed king?
First class adventure.
No, I...
Nah, I'm kidding. No, I really love the way he approaches the character and carries himself not only physically but just vocally, the jolliness of him. Yeah, great. Oh, Pat and Fane spotting again. Here we go. Now, this is the thing. Obviously, if you've watched the whole season, you know that Rand is the dragon. So the question is, one, did that really happen? 2, if it did happen, was he looking at Matt because of the dagger, or was he looking at Rand because he's a dragon? Or 3, maybe he was looking at both. You know? Very possible he was looking at both. Yeah. This is a tough scene. He's so clearly messed up, and he's just not doing well, and Rand is like trying to be strong for him, but he's also dealing with his own knowledge that he himself is probably the dragon. But he's like in denial about it, so he's like trying really hard. He's like, it's almost like he's so in denial about his own powers that he's trying his best to like help Matt as a avenue to try and help himself too.
It was all worth it to see Liandrin's face when she accidentally got hit with a radish.
This is a great scene. I love the scene with all the waters.
Haven't worn white since my father's funeral. And when she needed a warder, she was already so powerful that she could have had anybody she wanted, but...
This is such a good way to explain Waters and Aes Sedai. They did a great job in the first season of explaining Waters and Aes Sedai and the importance of their bond for future seasons. For many characters for future seasons.
She just rolled her eyes at me, and that was that.
Because it's such a central premise of the Wheel of Time story that you just gotta nail it.
To become worthy of her.
The gravity of it. You know? In order for so much of the Wheel of Time story to work and to be understood by the audience.
So, stop your whining.
I just realized that he has like tattoos on his mouth. I think I've watched this show like
including you
2 times before this. I've just noticed that.
First you lose Moiraine and then tell me how easy it is to jump from one moment to the next.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough for him. It's too soon, but it's also not too soon because it's been a month. I don't know. He's not had the proper like mental health care in as much as he could possibly get that in this world. I mean, I imagine the Yellow Sisters have mental health like sisters, but he's not had that properly. I really, really love this added touch of taking the ring, sans the stone, which I imagine might have been buried with Karene, but taking the ring and bringing it back here to put it back into the ring of metal from which new rings will be forged for new accepted and new Aes Sedai. That's like a really great touch. Added by the show, but I think fits so perfectly into this world. And into the ethos and the world building within the Wheel of Time. It's just perfect. Love it. This scene between them is just completely silent. It's just them emoting, feeling each other through the bond, understanding their mutual grief and their mutual fear of losing each other. Like, perfect for building their bond with each other, their relationship as Aes Sedai and Warder, and making us really feel the bond. Like, the way this episode lets us sit in grief and examines all aspects of grief. It's perfect. I love it. And then we have this fucking creepy scene where you get these grown-ass men rubbing down this 20-year-old girl naked. Like, what the hell? Why? I mean, I know why. It's because they want to make her feel unsettled and afraid and uncomfortable. They are intentionally making her feel fear and violation before this other dude comes in to get her off kilter so that he can interrogate her.
I can't channel.
There. We've proved it then. Because Aes Sedai certainly cannot lie.
So interesting that he believes they can't lie.
Shouldn't it say you're not?
Even though he doesn't trust Aes Sedai.
Perrin?
Like, that idea that Aes Sedai cannot lie is so set in this world that even this dude who's so prejudiced and awful, especially about Aes Sedai, believes it. So interesting. It's this is not to say that it's not true or anything. I'm just saying that it's interesting that he doesn't find it suspicious or suspect them of lying about not being able to lie. Nobody believes that.
Then do it.
But what we want you to do is stop lying to yourself about why you're doing what you're doing. Like, if you want to kill women, just be upfront about being a piece of shit.
You would have made a strong Aes Sedai.
Instead of pretending and hiding behind, I'm fighting for the light. Like, just go out and be a serial killer, man. It's the hypocrisy for me. But his fit looks clean, though. Like, they look great. I really like the outfits. This little belt thing and the sleeveless, like, tunic that extends down into a train or a coat. Looks great. Costume department, you did great.
If I could get a bit more of that tea you had.
Oh, Steppen looks so bad. Like, they did a great job of showing his deterioration after his Aes Sedai passed.
Oh. I'm not ready to let go of it yet.
Such a great study on grief, and especially grief expressed mostly by men in this episode. And they kind of let them experience these emotions throughout this episode in like a very multifaceted way. Because of course we get to the end of the episode and Lan is also experiencing grief because of this event that leads to his friend's death. It's just like a really good kind of glimpse into how the waters feel about not just the Aes Sedai but each other.
Escaped, did you?
I know it would be tough to show, but I think the only flaw for this episode is that we don't actually go out and see the gardens, especially when they come back and are crucial, you know, here in this scene.
Did you know that Ogier have access to the White Tower grounds?
Like, we needed to see that connecting scene of him going to the gardens and her going to the gardens. Even if we don't see them meeting each other, but knowing that they're going to the same place. I think we needed a scene like that, to be honest.
Where's Egwene?
Like, seeing her next to some flowers or something, and then Loyal coming up behind her and going, when he sees her braid or something. And then cut to this, and we would have, I think it would have connected better.
The wisdom's tea. In the morning, the fever had broken.
Yes, it did. I really like how they repurposed the story from the books for the scene. I think we're going to circle back around to it later on in season 2.
She's unbreakable.
But yeah, I really like how they utilized it here to be simultaneously a way to bond, to show the bond from Nynaeve to Egwene, from Egwene to Rand, or Rand to Egwene, as well as the bond between Rand and Nynaeve. Like, they used that story to do a lot of work here emotionally. And of course, fire.
You'll find me harder to kill than that girl.
Baby, we're talking sleight of hand. This is a misdirect. And then she burns the ropes on his arms. so he can break free. And he embraces a little bit of his wolf brother kind of power. I'm glad that she stabbed him, but the idea that he's dead from that is ridiculous. Like, you didn't even stab him like 3 times or slit his throat. He groaned. Why did you think he was dead?
Safely hidden away, I assume.
She's so into Moiraine. Moiraine absolutely rejected her advances, and she's absolutely mad about it. Like, she wants to kiss so bad, but she's never going to kiss you, girl. She's so obvious.
You know the trouble with always coming and going, Moiraine, is that when Nynaeve becomes a novice,
even if she didn't choose yellow, she would never choose red.
Force of will she cannot hide.
It'd be a cold day in hell.
Be better.
I love that she says this, and we know from the next episode that Moiraine knows that Liandrin has a man down by the docks or whatever that she's seeing. Of course, we don't know the truth of what's happening with that. They might not actually be romantically involved. It might be something else, but like, I like that the assumption is that they're together, and Moiraine knows that when she says that there. The Forsaken.
I need to see the truth.
I like the idea that these are prayer statues, but the point of the statues is not to invoke the Forsaken, but to ward off the Forsaken. I really like that.
For eternal life.
Sanche is many things.
I can't believe she put her
She's
shoes
never
on the
turned
bed.
sister without cause.
Moiraine, this place isn't what
I think this is the worst thing that I've seen in the show is Moiraine putting her dirty ass outside boots on this bed.
But I have no designs on this. I never have.
There's something interesting that we don't talk about much, but that there's so few sisters that even though Moiraine is like gone for years and years at a time, they don't like change her room out for a different sister or something. Like, they don't have to. There's so few sisters right now. Like, for a new sister who just, you know, took the shawl, you know.
Never been with a man. 2 men. Certainly not 2 men.
I love the assumption that if he bonds with them, he's going to absolutely fuck them. Or they're going to fucking whatever. I like the assumption. Because you don't have to have sex with anybody that you're bonded with. It's not a prerequisite or anything. But he's like, I mean, if I'm going to get bonded, we banging, though.
I have eyes. She touched the one power for the first time to save your life.
That she did.
She stubs his phone for you.
Very uncomfortable about the feelings that are growing for Lan. Oof, the zoom in on the cup of tea as he drinks when we know that he spiked the tea. Oof. Oof. Sucks, hon. Yeah. Honestly, when he first got up, I thought he was going to get up and turn around and find that Steppen had hung himself or something in the room, but yeah. I mean, I think that would be too brutal for Steppen to do to Lan like that. Like, I mean, Lan still is the first one to find him, but I think at least he didn't, like, try and be seen by Lan, you know? Yeah, I think he kind of made his decision while on the road. And he was like, I'm just going to get this ring to where it needs to be. I'm going to pay tribute to Karene and honor her, and then I'm going to join her. And I think he kind of knew, even before they got to Tar Valon, that he was going to do this. It was just never any doubt. I think he genuinely made his resolution on the road. Like, I know he put on an act, because very obviously he did, because he asked Nynaeve for the tea way earlier in the day. This is a great scene. I know that they added some aspects of, like, if I remember correctly, Jewish tradition, as well as Korean tradition of having a chief mourner, basically, and the kind of channeling the stoicism of being a warder into the idea of during grieving, having formal grieving, where one member takes on the grief of the entire family and the entire room, all of the loved ones, and it is the one person allowed to fully express that grief, you know. I really like the what that says about the tradition of the warders and how their relationship with emotions and their relationship with each other, which has been, of course, the running theme of the entire episode up till here. And this part where Moiraine is feeling everything that Lan is feeling, and she's like overcome even just from the little bit of feedback that she's getting from the bond, like, and then all the other warders just stoic and intensely focused on Lan, and Nynaeve being like, so like, what the hell is going on? And she doesn't even know what to do, so she's trying to keep together. Like, it's really, really, really good scene. It's saying so much. And then the rending of the garments, you know, pulling a lot of tradition, real world tradition, I mean, into the Warders story. Just all right, that was episode 5 of The Wheel of Time, my rewatch. So this is like my third time rewatching this show or so. I don't think I mentioned how many times I've rewatched it, but yeah, it's been a bit since I last rewatched it, but I have seen it multiple times. I really love this episode. I love the way that the episode experiences and examines grief through the eyes of Stepan, or through the story of Stepan, through the story of Lan, through the story of Perrin. It's all three of them, and even in the beginning with Alanna and a little bit Moiraine, and the way they kind of expressed grief towards Karene. But the episode mostly focused on these three men and how they process grief. And, you know, like with Perrin, it's been something that has been building up and building up and building up all season. And like, it kind of just he's forced to face it in this really horrific torture scene with Child Valda trying to force using Perrin as a pawn and trying to force Egwene to channel so that he has, I don't know, some modicum of an excuse to kill them freely. I don't know. Whatever. He really, like, there's not a single part of me that believes that if they had chosen, no, I can't channel, so kill Perrin, and he killed Perrin, there's not a single iota of me that believes that he would actually let Egwene go. I'm sorry. But anyway, yeah, so we kind of get this moment, because I would consider those three being the main focal points of the episode, of Perrin, and Egwene, I guess, too. Like, it's tough, right? Because of the central theme of the episode of dealing with grief, and dealing with horrible emotions, I think the center point was definitely still Perrin, Steppen, and Lan. And I really, really like the way that this season has been building up and building up and building up for Perrin until you get here. And it's like, in his mind, this is not what I think, but in his mind, he feels like he deserves this torture. He deserves the violence that's being enacted upon his body. He feels like he deserves to be killed because he couldn't protect Layla, because he feels guilt because he didn't love Layla the way that she deserved and the way that he wanted to. And because of all of these things and the time and the fact that he killed her, the guilt over being the one who killed her, or at least who swung the axe, and he's been going back and forth with the not Aram, but more like Isla, and he's been going back and forth about their theology and everything like that, the way of the leaf, and it just had to pop. The emotions have been building and building, and it just had to pop. And I think that they really, I still think that the kind of trauma that he went through in killing his wife is still so monumental that I don't know if the show is going to truly engage with it in a way that would be healthy in real life. But I mean, it's not real life. It is a fictional story. So I'm at least glad that they are engaging with it, which is why I mentioned this earlier in the season, but it's why I don't like the addition of the crush on Egwene and diverting his emotions away from his wife. I think the trauma of him killing his wife was sufficient for his character in this season and should have been the main focus of his arc, frankly. Because if you're going to fridge this woman for the sake of developing Perrin, this man's character, if we're going to fridge someone, then at the very least just make that more meaningful throughout. And I felt like a little bit the crush on Egwene, the reveal of the crush on Egwene kind of cheapened the decision to give him a wife and then kill her. You know? It just felt like it makes that a little bit less. Because it makes it, and I know not every audience member is going to feel that way, and I certainly don't 100% feel that way, but I feel like some people are going to approach this as if, oh well, I guess he didn't really love her, so him getting over his dead wife makes sense. Like, I know that there's some people who are going to feel like that or think that, or going to think that, well, I mean, he didn't really love her, so does she really matter? Like, you know, things like that. They're going to think that. They're going to feel that because of that. And I don't want that. I want, if you're going to give him a wife and then fridge her, then give him a wife and then fridge her and then deal with the consequences of that. And that's like that's one of the main reasons I don't like that crush. Also because I think that their relationship works the best as just friends. And I know that they're going to stay just friends, but I mean, without any kind of hint of any romance. It's completely unnecessary. But anyway, I've harped about that enough. What I did like about this episode with Perrin is that he did find he did find the courage to talk about it to Egwene, even though it was through this horrific event. And I like the way that Egwene kind of cut through and just was very honest. It's not your fault. It's not his fault. And even if he feels like that for the rest of his life, it's like, I'm never going to let you forget that it's not your fault. You know, that whole vibe of that scene was just really beautiful, and their relationship is really strong and really interesting and really beautiful. And I like the development of it, of their friendship. yeah. And then, of course, staying in that same scene, we get Egwene, like, intentionally channeling the one power for the first time. And it's, of course, to help save Perrin and herself. And I think she was ready to die, like, genuinely. I think if she got his ropes free and then Child Valda killed her right there, she still would have felt satisfied. Because she's that kind of person. She, like, if she can save Perrin, then, hey, job well done. She's done what she needed to do. But of course, there's more than that. So she frees, she uses a bit of sleight of hand. She makes Valda underestimate her. And Perrin gets free, and then the wolves attack. So, of course, we get another link to the wolves. It's the third time. First time was in the woods when his leg was injured and they licked the blood. Second time, of course, was when the wolves led him to the Cauthon. And then now third time is when they came in and raided the camp. So obviously the wolf connection between Perrin and this pack is very strong. I guess there's no indication necessarily that it's the same pack. It might be, actually. Actually, now that I'm saying that, I don't know if it's the same pack or if it's a completely different pack of wolves. So that'll be interesting to discover. And we got to see Perrin's golden eyes for the first time. So very excited about that. Egwene, like I mentioned during the episode, I really love the way that they're approaching the differences between Egwene and Nynaeve and how the way they think about using the power is so different because they're such different people. It kind of echoes back to, it doesn't echo, it's a direct, it's directly linked to early in the season when Moiraine was talking to Egwene about the power, that the power is only so much, that it's about your mind and how you use your mind and apply yourself that matters the most as an Aes Sedai. And I think that little bit of wisdom, that nugget of wisdom, stayed with Egwene, and I think it's going to be extremely helpful in the days to come when Egwene becomes, grows in power and becomes an Aes Sedai and all that stuff. I don't know. I just really like the bonds between the characters in the show and how they've really mapped them and explored them, but not some of them really directly and some of them subtly. But yeah, so that scene with Perrin and everything, and his handling of grief. And then you have the second one, of course, is Steppen, who his grief permeated the entirety of the episode from beginning to end, and how he interacts with the other warders, especially his bonds with, his bonds with them. Obviously, he loves them. They are comrades in arms. They are friends. They've been on the road for over a month for some of them, and they've obviously known each other for years, maybe even decades. We actually don't know how long he's been a warder. Certainly from when he was quote unquote a boy to now when he's in his, 50s, early 50s, and late 40s maybe. So at least probably a couple of decades. And so he has this sense of like strong duty to his position as a warder, especially as Karene's warder, because he feels like she did so much to save him from himself and his own anger and grief over his father, whom he hated, but he was grieving. And so he turned to violence and turned to bullying. Until Karene is the one who set him straight, because of course, like I mentioned, this whole episode is about grief. So you get this double kind of grief from Steppen. He tells this story of when he was younger and he was kind of grieving his father, but also hating him because he was terrible. And how, because his grief back then was all mixed in with his rage and anger, he lashed out and took it out on others. Whereas now in the present, he's gone through such a life, and his grief manifests internally, and he turns it in on himself. And instead of lashing out at others, I mean, he does lash out verbally a little bit, but generally his anger and is turned in on himself. Guilt, feelings of, I don't want to say inadequacy or incompetence. It's not that. It's just feelings of feeling like he's not enough. And that kind of insecurity is something that he kind of felt. I feel like he kind of felt that from the moment Karene chose him, and he felt like he wasn't worthy of her. And then he had to change himself to try to become worthy of her, but then she dies anyway. So I feel like probably he felt like he was right in the beginning. She chose wrongly for her warder, that he wasn't worthy of her. I think that there's some feelings of that in there. But of course it ends with his suicide, because he had, I mean, his friends were trying. Like, they were doing their best, but like he needed professional help, and he absolutely did not get that. Which, I don't know. I mean, there's other things involved with the bond being severed like that, just suddenly, and then having nothing to replace it. And of course, this is the episode where we learn that you can actually rebond a new Aes Sedai after another Aes Sedai dies, and vice versa. You can rebond a warder if your warder dies. And you can unbond your warder. That's something that we also hinted at. So these are concepts that, of course, come back later on and kind of are important to understand for future storylines. So again, I really, really like the way they used the Steppen and Karene story last episode and this episode to explore the warder Aes Sedai bond and better build out the world around that. Yeah, just really good writing. And then, of course, lastly, we have Lan's grief, and the way he's like, so he's grieving Karene because, you know, obviously they've known each other, but it's the thing that he fears the most is the idea that he and Moiraine will end up the same way. So he's deeply afraid of that. And then you have, of course, his fear over losing Steppen, because I imagine he must have seen other warders lose their Aes Sedai and then waste away, like Steppen was slowly doing before his eyes. The fear must have been very high for him, which is why he was trying so hard. He was even rushing it a bit, and like, he was doing everything he can to see if he could make it so that Steppen would stay alive. And of course, you know, none of it worked. Yeah, so then you have him holding it in, but very clearly panicking and worried about his friend. And then you get to the end and he dies and he finds his body. And he, you know, because of who he is, he doesn't allow himself to show his emotions, because for a number of reasons I won't get into, but it's only through this ritualistic mourning that he finally allows himself to experience grief for his friend, his close friend, clearly, in a way that he truly wants to feel, or wants to allow himself to feel, but where he locks it down normally. And I think that was just like a really beautifully acted, beautifully kind of written scene. And the parallel from the beginning of the episode with the funeral there to the end of the episode, and somehow the end of the episode was just so much more raw, just upsetting and terrible, or upsetting and just terrible to watch him experience this kind of grief. Just like Nynaeve, like it's just a really good scene. I'm sorry. There is not a single person on this planet that is going to convince me that this episode was unnecessary for both Lan's character as well as the audience understanding of the Aes Sedai Warder bond, as well as a good base for storylines that will unfold in the future. Like, it's doing like triple work, quadruple work if you include the Perrin storyline, which thematically mirrors the stuff that's happening in the White Tower. Like, come on, get out of here. And then lastly, we meet Loial, a new character. This is, of course, the first or the second non-human character that we've met. Of course, the first being Trollocs, and then the second being Fades. So now we've met a third non-human citizen of the Wheel of Time. It's such an interesting story because we don't put a lot of emphasis on the non-human characters and aspects of this world. So you can almost forget that there are non-human beings, but then of course you stumble upon a new non-human being, and you get reminded that this is a full high fantasy world. I mean, it's a little bit sci-fi, but for the most part, it's a high fantasy. It's a little bit sci-fi. Like, obviously, if you've watched the whole season, you know that it's actually post-apocalyptic. So there's a sci-fi element there, but there's other aspects too that are a bit sci-fi that I won't get into. So it's got like an interesting, fun mix of fantasy, sci-fi, a touch of like, religious fantasy as well. So it's an interesting mix of genres. So I think that's everything I want to say about episode 5. Like I said, the 4, 5, and 6 are my favorite episodes from season 1. So I've got lots to say about all 3 of them. Really love them. We're going to jump into to episode 6. And then we'll keep on with the story. And then tomorrow I'll probably film 7 and 8. So I do know that there's a extra scene at the end of episode 8 that has been added on. I will watch it, but that'll be the only thing I watch. I know that there's been a few more clips that have been released. But I'm not going to watch any of those. I'm only going to watch the one that's on the end of episode 8, okay? Just so that I don't get super duper spoiled. So, we're going to jump in and move on to the next episode. Probably my favorite episode of the season. Love a Moiraine episode. All right. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you guys think. And once this is up on YouTube, you will have all of season 2 probably on Patreon by that point. And then slowly coming out on YouTube too. Because, of course, right now there's the writers and actors strikes. So I'm not posting these on YouTube until much later. So you guys will be, it'll be a capsule in time. That's what's happening right now as I'm filming this. Just to give you guys some context. But I will see you guys in the next episode.
Baby, it's whatever. All this ever, but you long gone, it don't matter.